What's up, y'all? It's your boy Vinnie-Dangerous, and I'm back with another installment of Dangerous Minds. I appreciate you tuning in. Before we go on with today's episode, I'd like to send out my thoughts and prayers out to the people that are being affected by the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey. Shout out to my boy Shaquille out there in Houston. He is one of the people that is affected by that. I have contributed to the funds. I don't have a lot of money, but I contributed a little bit that I could afford to spare. I will leave a link in the description below of a reputable place where you could send your donations in. It's a long process, so it isn't something that needs to be done immediately, but I would encourage people to support and donate whatever they can. So I'm not gonna pump the Patreon site, and I will be posting the first exclusive video later this month. I will leave an announcement. I will put out an announcement for that when it does get released. So please follow the Instagram page and be on the lookout for that. So that will be posted up, but I won't be promoting that today because the the donations and relief for Hurricane Harvey is more important at this moment in time. So if you can contribute, I really encourage you to do so. So now let's get on with today's episode. I was a little thrown off. If you follow me on my social media, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to talk about for this episode. I went to Atlanta for a few days, and I had some other things I had to deal with. As soon as I got back, some stuff that I was anticipating, some stuff that that kind of caught me off guard. So I was a little rattled. So this one might be a little bit mumbly. This might be a little bit, rambly a little bit, but hey, let's rock with it. Let's have a discussion. So I wanted to get back to a conversation that I had on, it started on a comment section. You know how bad those get on a YouTube video. Hot 97 did a congratulations, you played yourself to Jim Brown. Now, if you don't know who Jim Brown is, he is a former NFL player / activist who did a lot of work for civil rights back in the day. And so, an activist, a football player turned activist, should have a lot in common with Colin Kaepernick. But instead of agreeing with Colin Kaepernick and coming to his aid, he said that he did not agree with the way that Colin Kaepernick is going about this. He said that you should choose between being a football player and an activist. You can't be protesting at your job because teams and the league have rules and regulations that you have to follow. And I'm an American. I wouldn't desecrate the flag or disrespect the national anthem. So I pray for him, but that's not how I agree with things and how they should go down. And Ebro and the guys on the Ebro in the Morning Show, they talked about how Jim Brown, first and foremost, and it was one of the things that kind of offended me, was the fact that he could have, instead of getting on that platform and talking about Colin Kaepernick, he could have reached out to Colin Kaepernick, and that he wished more older figures would come out and, instead of bashing the younger generation and how they decide to go about doing things, whether it's music or, activist work or anything else in between, how we decide to go through things, because it's my generation and people coming in after me that is he talking about. And it's the fact that instead of reaching out to us and pulling us to the side and having a conversation with us, hitting us, there's so many ways to get in contact with people now. Social media, you could easily get phone numbers and make the time to meet up with these people if you really have this strong opinion about how things are going down. And instead of doing that, you decide to get on the microphone or get in front of a television or get on the radio or get on some kind of media platform and bash them in front of the world instead of having that conversation face to face, or a personal conversation that could have maybe a better impact, or you could even come to an understanding and an agreement on how things should go down. Because once it's put out there on the public platform, kind of like when Kanye came after Jay on that stage and it started the rift between them, it's harder to repair that when it's out there in public versus, you know, it being between you two. It's kind of like, would you rather somebody pull you to the side and tell you that your breath stank or your armpits are a little funky? Would you rather them tell you that, pulling you to the side and telling you that personally, or would you want them to announce it to the whole class or the whole room of people that, you know, you happen to be in? You would rather them pull you to the side and talk to you about it. And that's the same way that I feel like things with, you know, when people have disagreements like this, and you feel like, especially when it comes to black people, because you don't really see too many other people, other, you know, race and groups of people doing that, you know, as much as black people. As far as with being on a public stage and, you know, airing your grievances about us in a public forum instead of it being, you know, something that we could have came together personally and talked about. And I call this episode In Defense of My Generation, because it seems that happens a lot. Because it also reminded me of when Tyler the Creator was on Hot 97 a few years back. I think it was right around the time when he was releasing his Cherry Bomb album. And he aired out his grievances about Boyce Watkins. Now, I follow Boyce Watkins, and I love the stuff he's doing with the Black Wealth Boot Camp, and, you know, different things that he's put out there to help people, help out black people, people in general, on a financial level that they might not understand. But I did agree with Tyler the Creator on the fact that maybe it should have been a personal conversation. It should have been had instead of it being something that he aired out. It was an issue with a commercial. He didn't agree with the content, thought it was racist. And because he came out and said it publicly, basically that deal from Tyler got pulled. And, you know, maybe it was too late because it was already out there in the world, and, you know, people saw it and it was already in rotation. So maybe he had to go out in a public forum. If he felt it was that bad and that damaging, maybe he needed to come out and, you know, make his feelings be known on a public forum, since it was already out there in the open. But I still feel like a private conversation should have been had. So when Tyler got up there and he was bashing Boyce Watkins and he said fuck him and all this other stuff, I could not, you know, disagree with how he felt. That's money out of his pocket. You know, that's taking money out of somebody's pocket, you know, somebody that is probably responsible for a lot of people and taking care of a large company that he's pretty much running. And that could have been more money into the pockets of him and all the people around him. And it was taken away from him. And all that needed to be done was a conversation. You know, so, and then I think about, you know, Trick Daddy being mad at The Game, you know, or Trina being upset, you know, about music today, and then people, you know, the negative images that are being portrayed. And then I think about when I see older rappers and older entertainers do stuff like that. And I think it's just so weird. Like, you were doing this stuff, you may have not been doing it the same way. You may have had a little bit more substance in there. But let's just be honest. You know, the negativity that was in your music is still being displayed in the younger generation today. You know, you can't be upset that they're following your footsteps and you didn't do anything to do anything better. You made your money. You made your money. You enhanced your fame doing what you were doing. And now you see other people coming up behind you doing about the same thing with the same type of negative connotations in their art and their music. And then you want to be upset. You know, this whole Trick Daddy and Meek Mill thing I thought was just dumb. And it's just going back to what I said. Why didn't Trick Daddy, you know, being the older man, the OG in the situation, why didn't he go to Meek Mill and say, hey, you know, what you said was foul? Or get a better understanding. Because I don't think Meek Mill, I mean, it was something about, had something to do with boys in, you know, Miami or Florida or whatever. And, you know, I think Trick Daddy took it the wrong way. But in reality, I don't think Meek, you know, meant any harm by that comment. And then a simple conversation could have been had to diffuse the whole situation. But you got on a public stage and you decided to make it be known, you know, maybe even, you know, enhancing your relevancy. Maybe that's where the plan and like where all that shit came from. Who knows? But if he really felt that way and it wasn't a publicity thing, just call that man. Find somebody that got his number. I know y'all run in the same circle of people. Shit, it seems like Meek is always in Miami. Maybe you should have had a conversation with that man. Reached out to him and said, yo, I want to holler at you for a second. Do something like that other than saying, you know, fuck this dude. He's never allowed in Miami again. That's whack. I think it's whack when we do the shit like that. I think it's whack, especially because people like Jim Brown and other older people from the generation. I'm not saying all, I'm saying some. You know, you can go back to my Facebook rant if you want to, you know, reference this. But just to elaborate on it, the biggest problem I have with it is the fact that we learned from you. You can blame television, you can blame movies, you can blame whatever other influences that are here today that probably wasn't, you know, there when you were coming up. But the fact is, it still falls on the people that we followed, you know, coming up. Because somewhere down the line, you missed a step, whether it was your influence, like Trina and Trick Daddy before Meek and other artists coming up in this generation. Or it's the fact that you didn't do your part in the beginning. Like Jim Brown, your influence is the reason why there are NFL players like Colin Kaepernick and other guys that are unifying with him to protest the national anthem that inspired them. But you went about it a different way, but it wasn't socially acceptable when you were doing it, and it's not socially acceptable when they were doing it. Excuse me. So the fact that you feel the need to come at anybody about doing pretty much the exact same thing that you were doing is stupid. Because like I said, you influenced this. Just like when people of an older generation talk bad about negative music in hip hop that, you know, that they don't agree with, you know, you influenced that as well. Or you didn't take the time to talk to the younger generation when they were coming up so they didn't have to do it. So when I see, and it's not just for entertainers, it's for anybody that got some negative shit to say about the kids nowadays. If you look back and you realize that you had an opportunity to talk to some of these young kids, or you had an opportunity to diffuse the situation before it got to them so they could do something better, and you didn't take it, then you are part of the problem that you were trying to address. So why don't you pull these young kids to the side and have these conversations? And if you feel like it's hard to have those conversations, then maybe you should have thought about that before you dismissed them, or you did not take the time to talk to them when they were willing to listen. Maybe you should have thought about that, and you should figure out a way, because it's harder now, but it was easier then. You can either make up for lost times, or you can shut up. At the end of the day, I don't agree with everything that my generation does, and I've said that multiple times on this show, but I do understand that where these influences come from. And hell, if a couple of things were out of place when I was growing up, I would be wilding out just like a lot of my contemporaries and a lot of people that are in my age group. So I don't knock them to a certain extent because I know how it could have been. But y'all had more responsibility. Y'all had more of an opportunity to make things different, and you didn't. So don't talk shit now when you wasn't willing to do right then. Because the very least you could do is pick up the phone and give us a call. That's all I got to say. You know, that was in response to all the negative comments I might have got from my Facebook post or, you know, my comments on YouTube. So there's my response to it. This is my defense for my generation, Follow me on the IG page at Dangerous Minds YouTube, you know, the Patreon site. But before you do that, support the efforts to clean up Hurricane Harvey. Tune in next week for another episode of Dangerous Minds, and I see you next time. Peace.
Don't worry about it. Y'all promise this is something they ain't heard before. I'm all about giving the people something a little different. Hi-hats.